I'm Mel Stewart, and this is the SwimSwam podcast. Joining me today is the most handsome man in swimming. No, I'm not talking about our guest. I'm talking about Coleman Hodges, the man on deck and the head of production at SwimSwam. But today we do have a very special guest. We have the fastest man in the history of Canadian swimming, world champion, Olympic medalist, co-founder of SwimmingSecrets.com. Did you hear that? You heard it here, SwimmingSecrets.com. Go there so that you can figure out what it means to have the swimming secrets. He's also the vice captain of the Toronto Titans, the International Swimming League franchise, and he sits on the board of the International Swimmers Alliance. Today, we're talking to our best buddy, Brent Hayden.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
To someone to help us understand what was going on with the alliance, because Matt Biondi is the manager. He's like, it's just the alliance, but let's be formal here. It is the International Swimmers Alliance. It's not a union, it's an association, but it is a powerful voice for elite athletes, and you have a leadership position. How did you get this leadership position?
You know, it all started for us, the swimmers anyways, in Budapest at the ISL. Matt Biondi was there, and he came into one of our team meetings and gave his presentation and talked about what his vision was, and just left a stack of papers for us to all take and read. And I ended up stopping him a couple times in the hallway, and he actually had no idea who I was, but I definitely had an idea who he was, because Matt was, I'm still a product of the 80s, being born in 83. So Matt was one of those names that probably the first name I ever actually remember hearing growing up. I remember my coaches talking about, like the Matt Biondi drill was something that we always did. I don't even remember what that drill actually was, but maybe I can ask one of my old coaches. But and then he had a big meeting where we got all the swimmers who were interested. So he presented it to us there. And then we just kind of, people just sort of, put their hats in the ring for whoever wanted to be a part of it. Now, for me personally, I came back to the sport primarily because, I fell out of the love of the sport, back in 2012, with depression and everything. And so this was kind of my coming back for a chance to fall in love with the sport again. And when I heard Matt talking about this and, giving us like what his vision was, the sport is like, well, what better way for me to kind of fall in love with the sport than to actually make sure that I'm leaving it in a better place for everyone who's coming after me as well.
It's I love Matt Biondi. We have a long relationship. He was my team captain in the 80s. And, I'm sure he did. Well, that's a good question. Did he share with you his history as an athlete and what he went through fighting for athletes' rights?
Yeah, he did.
And how did that land? How did he explain that?
I think a lot of people in the room, like, I don't think we would be able to understand, wholly what he went through, but I think a lot of us have probably felt at least a taste of that, whether it's with, our own individual sponsors or NSOs, teams, just politics in general. Right. And so I think a lot of swimmers were thinking like, I've sort of experienced a little bit of that too. And, it's in a lot of ways, like sometimes the athletes just don't feel like we have a say in anything. We kind of just we have to do or else. Right. So this is just, I see it as an opportunity to make sure that the athletes get their voices heard and that we have our rights represented.
It's so back in the 80s when things were dire and they've improved decade over decade, but their rights are always, I think you pinpointed it, rights are always at the forefront of your mind when you're an elite athlete. But to kind of give us some historical reference, Biondi at the time could not earn any money until he retired from swimming, and he fought for the rights to earn a living just to support his training because he was living off of his parents' goodwill. And back then the culture was once you swam through your collegiate years, you were told, hey, you know, don't be a swim bum. Start your career, start your life. And that was a fight. That was a cultural fight that he had. And I think it cost him. I think Matt would have had a great 92 Olympics, kind of like his 88, where he won 7 medals. I think he would have had another 5 to 7 medal Olympics if he had not spent all this bandwidth and energy fighting. And then he sort of disappeared and went away and was a teacher. And when he came back and said, hey, Mel, this is what I'm doing. I was like, wow, you're picking up where you left off. He said, yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Yeah, it's one of the things he actually started the meeting with, telling us how he had been dreaming of this first meeting for 31 years. So I like when he said that, like, I can't speak for the other athletes, but like that kind of hit me like a ton of bricks. Like, wow, like this has been something that, you know, it's been a passion of his, but like, man, like it's been a long time coming. Like, it almost makes you wonder, like, why haven't we been able to have something like this sooner? Right. So, I mean, it's definitely better late than never, but it just goes to show how much ground we still have to make in this swimming community.
Something that our listeners, something that swim fans are really, they look at this and this is what they're thinking. They're like, how is the International Swimmers Alliance going to work? And they know it's going to work in the sense that it's going to be a powerful voice to negotiate better economic circumstances with FINA, perhaps, and ultimately with their national governing bodies, and also with the International Swimming League. So in terms of how you guys were explained the Swimmers Alliance and where you're going to make your first stand, where is that? Like where does it begin?
Yeah, I think the first thing is making sure that athletes are getting paid, right? Like there's a huge financial gap, like when it comes to you know, how much swimmers are able to make, but also just making sure we're getting paid on time. Like, I mean, swimmers can always tell you that their payments are coming in late. Like, no matter what competition it is, like seemingly it's like payments are always coming in late. And, you know, like here we are trying to train, you know, we're putting gas in our cars to get to training, or, you know, buying, you know, bus passes or whatever as we need to get there. We're paying for rent, we're paying for groceries, you know, whether we got a competition or a training camp coming up, like our bills don't stop. And for a lot of athletes, like, you know, especially ones who aren't the superstars, like they're literally living on the knife's edge of not being able to continue in the sport anymore. And so like one late payment could literally force somebody into retirement against their wishes. So I feel like that's sort of one of the most pressing areas that we want to kind of be like, you know, speaking up on the athletes' behalf.
It did. I think the first thing that comes to mind, that makes sense. Thanks for that answer. That was very clear. Let's stay there for a second. It's so this is when you travel around the world. If people aren't aware that you go to money meets, you're invited out. Sometimes your expenses are paid, sometimes they're not paid. Sometimes you're just rolling the dice and going, I'm going to try to swim fast and make that money there. But payment is late. You don't have to call anybody out, but could you give me a horror story about how late payment would come at one of these purse meets?
Well, I'll just say that one of our board members, you know, said that from, you know, I don't want to say who it is and what organization it was, but he's rolling on month 48, 2 years, right? Or no, what is that? 12, 24, 30, yeah, sorry, 24 months since he's like still waiting for that payment. So that's more than I was even expecting. You know, like I've definitely personally had, you know, 5 to 6 months, but man, like 2 years, that's pretty insane.
You know, in business, you have to manage accounts receivable, which just means getting paid.
Yeah, I mean, like, and a lot of these times, these are written in our contract saying you're going to be paid on this date, and you know, we as athletes, we're always being expected to uphold our ends of these contracts, and this goes beyond even just financials, right? And sometimes it just seems like we're being held accountable, but then the other parties on the other side of it aren't being held accountable. So what happens when the other side isn't held accountable? Well, swimmers still, for a big part of it, still haven't had a voice to stand up for them, especially like, I don't want to say the little guy, but like, the non-superstar swimmers. Like, what do they do when the other side of their contract isn't fulfilling their obligations, right? Like, so we want to make sure that they have that voice and they have that support behind them as well.
I'll come back to this, the accounts receivable things in business, which really just means getting paid. Just from a personal standpoint, let's just say you have to follow up about, hey, can you get paid? These are emails, phone calls. Have you done this for several months and like sent endless emails? Hey guys, when's payment forthcoming?
Yeah, I remember being back in my first life in swimming. There was a situation where I was having to fire off emails and write official letters and things like that. And it's never comfortable, because a lot of times you're sending these emails and these letters to people who you actually have relationships with, right? And so you don't want to end up on the wrong side of a, like, in someone's bad books in a relationship, right? So like, because you want to make sure that you're being heard and that you're being respected, but you also don't want to be, how do you say it? Right.
You don't want to be ostracized next year.
Exactly. You don't want to be ostracized. You don't want to be burning any bridges in order to do it. And then you're also thinking like, well, I'm still planning on being in the sport a little bit longer, right? Like, I don't want to be, creating any bad relationships with people either. So I think this is going to take a lot of that. Like the board will be able to kind of take that responsibility right now. So now the individual swimmers won't necessarily need to be put in those situations.
If anyone out there is in a union, I'm in a union. I'm in the Writers Guild, and I've been active and I've not been active. But on the years where I was active, I can tell you that there's no negotiation. There's no issues. It's if you are engaged for business and you sign an agreement, your payments come on time. Everything happens on time. I had the best insurance of my life when I was active. It was so good. It was so much protection that, dropping out, I still pay dues because I'm like, I really support what this is about. So if you're in the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild, the Writers Guild, these protections are rock solid. And I've always wondered if the Alliance would move into a situation where there's these blanket contracts with FINA, in the governing bodies, with ISL, where these rules are followed. Otherwise, the block of athletes are sitting down.
Yeah. I mean, you never know where the direction is going to go with this, right? Like I said, we just had our first meeting today, so we're still very early, and we're still trying to, we're going to be figuring out our bearings, over the first few months of this. But man, like I'm really excited about it, because on one hand, like, it's been a long time coming for swimming, but at the same time too, it's like, we are not, this is one thing that we talk about, like, we're not trailblazers in this at all. Like, we're one of the only professional sports that doesn't have or hasn't had an alliance like this, like even in the NHL, for example, with, the Players Association, right? So it's like, we feel like we're not trying to necessarily create something new. It's like, we're trying to to the rest of the world. Like this should have been done a long time ago. And I think, I think everyone's got to recognize Matt for, really, for 31 years working to make sure that swimmers actually get this. Because like I said, he was done how long ago, and you can still see the passion he has for the sport after so many years to come back and still working to make the sport a better place for everyone.
And I think that's an interesting point, because the Alliance has come hand in hand with a professional league, right? With the ISL. And you mentioned every other sport has their Players Alliance, but it's kind of it's kind of built structurally around or within their league, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL. And so I don't think it's any surprise that this alliance has come when swimming finally isn't just, it's becoming not just an Olympic sport. It is becoming a seasonal sport with an actual players league, and therefore giving swimmers the means to actually make an alliance and represent themselves, because there's actually money on the table now, besides just, money meets that happen once a year and the Olympics that happens once every 4 years.
Yeah, no, 100%. Like, like you said, with the ISL, like it's no longer just an Olympic sport. Like it's now a professional sport. I mean, we can talk about how, this still should have been in place a long time ago, but now with the ISL, like we definitely need this in place. And like, again, I got to tip my hat to Matt Biondi for being a leader on this.
To the International Swimming League's credit, Coleman was in some of these meetings before they launched. Long before they launched, they sat down with us, as SwimSwam, and just as shareholders in the sport, and sort of broke down and gave us this educational, this is who we are, this is our goals. These are our goals. This is what we intend to do. And always coupled with the International Swimming League was the alliance as a balance. And it's never not been a part of the conversation, even though it's taken 2 years to come on board, because that's how long it took Matt to sign on 120 athletes. But the relationship is cozy. You have let's see here, in terms of the board breakdown, is it 6 athletes? We have 6 athletes, and then 4 that are a part of management, and there is an additional tiebreaker, isn't there? Who's the tiebreaker on the board?
The tiebreaker, I'm actually not 100% sure of yet. We're still figuring some things out. We got quite a few documents that we need to memorize. I got most of it done, but still kind of learning as we go.
So to ISL's credit, they've always said that we have to have an alliance that is going to be the opposite side of the coin for the International Swimming League. But they do have say on the board, and it's I'm wondering how this influence feels. Does this feel positive? Does it feel like a guiding hand?
I mean, let's be honest. The ISL is a great thing for swimmers. I think that was one of the things that I was actually most excited about coming out of retirement. Was after I retired. And then they announced this ISL. I kind of had that moment where I was like, oh man, I wish we had this during when I was still swimming. So that was one of the big motivating factors for when I was coming back, that I might get a chance to actually go and do that. Right. So, I mean, obviously, the ISL, I do feel has swimming in general's best interests at heart. So yeah, 100%. I'm fully behind them on that.
In talking to Matt said that in terms of the revenue, so let's just, it's all going to be dollars over and above what exists today. So it has to be new money. It has to be more money. And that's a sweetheart deal. The breakdown of the new money is 80% to the athletes, 20% to the association. That's admin and management. It's so here's the question that the critical people in the background are asking, and they bring up in meetings when we have our editorial roundtables. Let's say that it's of the billions of dollars with the International Olympic Committee. The alliance negotiates a big chunk from them or from FINA, and suddenly the budget is in the millions. It's 10 million, 20 million. It could, could be 50 million. At a certain point, 20% of the management is going to be a pretty big nut. Does the board have the ability to change the structure in the future?
I honestly don't have that answer. I feel like because each board member has a certain number of votes So I would believe that we could always put things to a vote, because there's one thing that was made very, I think was pretty apparent in our board meeting, was that I don't think anybody is there for to get paid, really. Right, like everybody is on that board because we genuinely feel like we want to make the swimming a better community for everyone that's coming in after us. Right, it's all about finding, always leaving something better than how you found it. I mean, we've all put our blood, sweat, and tears into this sport, and that is 100% the motivating factor for all these athletes to be a part of this.
Understood. Also, you're 37 years old.
Yeah,
I
know I don't look it, right?
You're 37 years old. You're not going to benefit from this, more than likely. You're it's great to be a founding member. It's great to be a part of history. This certainly goes with your resume and all of the wonderful achievements you've had. But you're not going to benefit, and everybody currently, even younger swimmers, are not going to benefit. Matt, I'm wondering if Matt has managed expectations, because in his conversations publicly with us, he said, when pro football, the Players Association they didn't really have a say or any power. It took them over a decade with the NFL in the United States, which we take for granted now. How has he explained that to you in terms of what the next 4 years, 5 years, 10 years will look like?
Yeah, I think that's something that will probably be discussed in the later meetings. I think everybody kind of has that expectation that, it is going to take a while to, to kind of, what do you want to say, kind of get that, make our voices heard and kind of have that stance and that sort of support. But, like I said, we all got to start somewhere. And the great thing is that we got, all these amazing people, again, being led by Matt to kind of take the reins on this thing and get it going. Because if not now, like when, right?
I'm gonna kick this over to Coleman here in a second, but let's play this game. In my as someone who's a swimming fan, a former elite, in my heart of hearts and in my swim fantasy, this is what I would like to see with the Alliance. I would like to see the Alliance negotiate a part of the television rights from FINA, and have and for that percentage to be public, and for us to know how that's going to be divvied up, so that we know it's a bigger number and that athletes are going for it. Additionally, I would like to see athletes have more real estate on their body, or real estate actually at the venue. It's a revenue driving force. So that's my swim fantasy for the Alliance. Coleman, what about you? Have you thought about this?
Hold on. I don't know that everyone listening might understand what you mean by real estate on their body or in the venue.
So here's the thing. At FINA, and Brent can share this with you. Did you wear the bibs? Did you have to wear bibs?
Yeah. You're walking behind
the bibs. Yeah, this is advertisement on your body.
Yeah, you walk out behind the blocks and you've got your bibs, got your lane number, but then it's also got the event sponsor, right? Like the corporate sponsor on there as well. Like, it'll have like the swimsuit sponsor, but then it'll be like another sponsor, like Yakult has always been a big one, or like Canon or Nikon. We've seen it, and first off, obviously a huge thank you to them, because otherwise we probably wouldn't be able to have these competitions. But like, we don't have personal relationships with these sponsors, and we're putting them on us. But I think it would be nice to be able to include our own personal sponsors and give them the I want to say like the visual representation of like, these are athletes that we are supporting, right? So allow us to go out onto the pool deck to show that. And I do feel like not being allowed to do that makes a lot of potential sponsors think that they're not really going to get a lot of return on their investment, because their support of that athlete is not going to be seen, right? So there's showing the thank you to our sponsors here. They are, but also like, what about the potential sponsors as well? I can only think of how many athletes have missed out on huge sponsorship opportunities just because they weren't allowed to actually to show those sponsors logos.
Thanks for clarifying that, Brent, and thanks for asking that additional question, Coleman. But in terms of the alliance hope for the future, have you thought this through, Coleman?
I mean, we saw in the suit era, in the full body suits, how FINA, or maybe it was once they prohibited the full body suits, but FINA made the rule of like the tag can only be this big, right? And or the logo on the suit, can only be a certain size, which kind of ridiculous. But and then we saw Caleb Dressel suit up in a full body suit, and he had like sub 20 down one leg, and he had Dressel down the other leg, and he had like the full cap for it, and he looked like a freaking racing car. And
he looked like a superhero.
Exactly.
It was awesome.
I mean, he was logoed up, and and it was put on by Speedo, so it was all Speedo stuff. But it's like there's so much potential there, even if we don't bring back full suits. But what if you had meets where there were full suits? I mean, because people would want to see that. But even if you only have jammers for guys and knee skins for girls, like there's still real estate there, like Mel said.
Yeah, there's also the tracksuits that we wear when we're walking out behind the blocks too, right? There's towels that we could have over our shoulders, right? Like there's lots of rooms that there are swim caps. I could tattoo the side of my head, right? Like you never know.
Yeah, and so it seems like to end out on Mel's point, it seems like there's a lot of potential opportunities, bargaining opportunities that this alliance could rally for and get sponsors involved and get swimmers paid.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even just you guys even just talking about what your goals would be for this alliance, like that's another reason why I think we're here. Like we're here to also listen to the athletes, to hear what they want, right? It's not just us trying to dictate what what we think the swimmers want. I mean, we are swimmers ourselves, but like we are there to be the voice and to actually to listen and then communicate that forward.
What's interesting, it was in Matt sent us a really big breakdown, an encyclopedia of Swimmers Alliance, and
I'm still reading it.
No, it's
committing it to memory.
But in terms of like the things that you take for granted, it's he's like, Mel, my biggest concern is COVID and protections and safeguards, and I guess we've got to be aware that we want our athletes to be safe, and he talked about fair treatment and of the sexes, people of color, and I was like, so he has some foundational things that he wanted to be in place, and he wanted to show leadership there. Something that people take for granted is that you show up at huge events and your name may or may not be used, but they just use it. And he wanted some protections around name and likeness. So if you're a sponsor of the World Championships, that doesn't automatically make you a sponsor of Brent Hayden.
Yeah.
And these are some obvious things where athletes have sort of just accepted it over the years, and this wouldn't be accepted in other sports.
Oh, 100%.
How long is the board position? How long are you there?
I think it's so when you I've actually got it here because that's one of the things. Like I said, I am still kind of memorizing everything, but I know that when I retire, when the athletes actually do retire, they actually still get to stay on the board, but they get demoted. So that means that, they will, their votes will get halved. And then there's a period where then they're, they get demoted again. But like I said, we're still very new, and hopefully I'll have more of these finer points memorized a little better, but
we'll bring you back for that.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's. I remember him sharing that. He also said that it's because we want athletes who are out, who don't have skin in the game, but really just are culturally care because they identify with swim, and they're you're the exact example of that. We're down to 5 minutes, and it's my biggest question about the alliance was is the board. So the board will have oversight over the Alliance budget, and I'm wondering how that's going to work. And it seems like in terms of the makeup of the board, it seems like the athletes have the majority. But God, I'd like to be a fly on the wall in those meetings.
I mean, you can always talk to Matt. I mean, see if he'll let you chime in on or get in there on one of them, because
those are going to be closed meetings.
Well, I mean, it's like I feel like transparency is obviously always important, and we want to try to be as transparent as possible. So I don't know, maybe there is a way for that to happen, but I would just drop Matt a message and see.
How often are you meeting right now?
Right now it's once a month. So we have our next meeting planned for the 17th of March.
And
you're active and you're moving.
Yeah. I mean, we're all training still. We got other priorities right now. We're trying to get ready for Tokyo and our Olympic trials and that. So obviously we don't want to be taking up too much time and attention away from training in order to do this. I rushed home straight from training, and I walked in the door with literally 2 minutes before the meeting started. I skipped my warm down at practice, and I might be feeling the lactic tomorrow, and some delayed onset muscle soreness. But yeah, it's like I said, we're all currently training, or the majority of us are currently training athletes. So, we got to make sure that we're not sacrificing our preparation.
It's obviously remote. Everything's a Zoom meeting, I'm assuming. And it's we've got 6 superstars on the board that are currently athletes. Who is, why do I feel like, is Tom the most vocal? Tom Shields? Or is it Katinka?
No, I feel like everybody chimed in today. I was pretty vocal in it. I think everybody took a moment to kind of say at least a couple things. So it was it's pretty. I will say it is pretty cool to be hopping on a Zoom call with all these other great athletes and kind of being a part of that group. So that's just a little thing that's in the back of my head. Oh my God, this is actually really cool to be a part of and to be included with such great athletes.
And I'm sorry. Give our listeners a little bit of context. Those athletes include Renomi Kremwe-Yo-Yo, Katinka Hozu, Leah Neal, Tom Shields, Brent, who's on with us now, and Chad Leclos.
Yeah.
And this is going back, we're down to 2 minutes, but going back to what I was talking about earlier and being a fly on the wall. What's interesting is that you're going to be talking about big numbers and big changes, because the flip side of this is one of your board members, Tom Shields, is currently in a lawsuit with Katinka, also in the lawsuit with FINA. And that really is about discovery, and that's about seeing the nitty-gritty details of finances in international swimming. And it's all about disclosure and finding those real numbers. They put out some documents that looked very professional, and they made a lot of sense. But I'm always wondering if the story's a little different, and something tells me you guys are going to hear about this sooner than anyone else on the Alliance board.
Yeah, we haven't heard about it yet. That wasn't on the agenda today, but yeah, maybe in the future.
You have any parting thoughts?
No, I mean, I think I've sort of said everything. It's been a long time coming. We got a lot of work to do, but we're going to do the best job that we can to make sure that swimming is in a better place than when we found it.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.